understand, what's a carb, what's a protein, what's a color, how can I use the performance plate method. In the dining hall, I think being prepared will help you feel more confident in the dining hall, and then also being flexible with your nutrition plan. Hello and welcome back to the Eat More Carbs podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts and sports dietitian, Reilly Beatty. In this episode, I'm here with my co-host and fellow performance dietitian, Jenna Fisher.
Welcome to the podcast.
In this episode, we are going to be doing a back to school special focusing specifically on fueling your body properly on a college campus and navigating the dining halls as both a student athlete and as an active individual.
I know we've gotten a bunch of really good questions about going back to school and dining in cafeterias, dining halls, and even dorm rooms. But before we get into some of those questions, if you're new to the podcast, Reilly and I do a high and low segment where we talk about some of the good things that have happened in our week and maybe some of the things that we're not so much loving or wish we had gone a little bit differently. So I will kick us off today. My high for the week is that I recently went to a restaurant and I had the best appetizer I think I've had ever. They did Brussels sprouts and they had this like balsamic glaze on them, and I love Brussels sprouts, and it was just so good. And so now I have a new favorite restaurant, and now I want to go there all the time just for their Brussels sprouts. So good. I love it when you've got a clever way to eat a veggie.
I also think that Brussels sprouts can be elevated so much. Like, they could be so bad, but they can be so good. And once you get like a really good Brussels sprout like dish or recipe, like, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I know that back in the internship when you told me to dip my Brussels sprouts in hummus, I thought you were absolutely crazy. But roasted Brussels sprouts dipped in hummus is a game changer. Don't knock it till you try it.
I know, I haven't had it in a while. I need to bring it back, but it is such a random combination. But hey, it's like a protein fat with a color. And I mean, that's the ingredients for a great snack. So, I mean, nothing wrong with it. Everybody needs to try it.
Yeah. Let us know if you try it. My low for the week is that I signed up for a race in November that's a 10K. And the start line, I know, look at me go. The start line is literally like a couple feet away from where we live. It's so convenient. I'm like, perfect. Because we moved here and it's so much warmer here, I've definitely been like neglecting my running. And we went running outside the other day and it felt so warm. I was so sweaty and so uncomfortable. So it's so important to make sure you're hydrated, have your electrolytes, especially if you are in a warmer climate. I know we talk about this all the time, but like I was feeling that, and it was not a long run. I went like 3 miles and I was dying.
I was going to ask, are you like following a type of plan, or do you have like a training plan for your race?
Oh, I am winging this 100%. The race sends you like wonderful resources where it's like, follow our training plan so you're prepared the day of the race. And I'm just in my mind, I'm like, oh no, I've been a runner, so I can do this. It's no problem. No, you should follow the training plan. It's there for a reason, especially if you haven't run in a while. So I was very humbled on my run the other day.
This reminds me of a story that you told on the podcast like a couple months ago, a couple episodes back, about your friend Taylor, I believe, who like winged her half marathon and couldn't walk for 3 weeks. So you know better.
Yeah, big shout out to Taylor though. We were in college and we decided to sign up for a half marathon, and she trained for 3 miles total and then went out and ran a half marathon. So something to be said about her determination and willpower, but definitely goes to show on the other end, if you don't prep and practice and prepare the right way, you're going to feel it on the other side of that.
Yes, everybody needs to prepare. Please prepare.
Yes. Reilly, what's your high and low for the week?
Yeah, so I'll start off with my high. It definitely wasn't planned high, but when I got on to record this podcast, I want everybody to know that Jenna is wearing an NC State shirt, and I am just the happiest person. This literally has made my week. I just was so surprised. I was so shocked that you still have the NC State shirt. I took a picture. I'm going to make sure to post it so everybody can see it. This was just literally had just made my life.
Reilly gave me this shirt when we were interns, and it's like a long sleeve Adidas NC State shirt. I did not go to NC State, but I have kept it all these years because it is my favorite shirt to run in. I go running outside like in the winters in Cleveland back when I still lived there, and so you could wear long sleeves when you're running, and people would like yell at me like, go pack, and I would be like, I don't know how to respond because I didn't go there, but now I know to respond with go pack.
One of the, I guess, upsides of me getting injured my senior year is I got all the gear, just trying to stay positive here, right? I got all the gear but I wasn't really always going to practice, so I never wore the gear. So I still have a lot of the gear because it didn't get like super sweaty. I wasn't wearing it every single day. Like it didn't get put on a loop. It wasn't, going through the big washing machine. I'm gonna have to wear a NC State shirt next time that we record. I'm just so honored. It looks so good on you too.
Thank you. I know that's why you gave it to me in the first place. So.
Yes, it is. So my low for the week is, I know that we're basically a plant podcast at this point, so I have a plant story because if you're tuning in for the first time, we really love our plants here. We try to be really good plant moms, but we're learning.
Some of our plants have not quite learned to survive in our fast-paced environment.
Exactly. We at the Eat More Carbs podcast, we like a fast-paced environment. We like a fast-paced plant environment. So you have to be low maintenance. You have to be able to stick it out. So I have never had a green thumb, but I've been trying really, really hard. I was counting today. I think I have like almost 15 plants in the house. A lot of them are, again, like, yes, it's a big number, but a lot of them are like small succulents or like cactus, like low maintenance plants. I always water like once or twice a week. I go around and like spray them, like really, leaning into the plant mom thing. We're rearranging some furniture in the house, and the other day, it was the day after I had watered the plants. I'm working with Robbie, my husband, to rearrange some of the furniture, and he goes, "Are you going to do anything about this dead plant?" And I was like, "What dead plant? There's no dead plants. I just watered them all yesterday." He goes, "Yeah, that one is dead." So I find one of my little succulents looks like it has been caught on fire. Like it is not yellow or brown. The thing is incinerate. I'm like, how did this it has shrunk down. I'm gonna have to take a picture and send it to you. I do not know what happened, how it died in like 12 to 16 hours. Like not like wilted, a third of the size, black, shriveled up. He was like, "Did the dog eat it?" I'm like, "No, the plant is still there. It just has shriveled up and died."
Oh my gosh. I wonder if it caught some sort of like infection. Plants can get sick, right?
I guess. Or like maybe like a cleaning material or something was used on it. That's the only thing I can maybe think of. I just had to share because we're basically a plant podcast at this point.
Man, I'm sorry for your loss.
Me too. It's okay. But now I get to go to Home Depot and get another one.
Yeah. It's one out, one in, right?
Exactly.
It's not FIFO or LIFO when it's like that. It's just one out, one in.
Exactly. So if anybody has any insight, we might need to get a plant expert on this podcast. I know we're a nutrition podcast, but we are plant moms.
And we need some help with helping our plants' nutrition because apparently
we should stick to human nutrition.
Stay in our lane.
Yes. But because this is a nutrition podcast, we should start talking and jump into what we're talking about today, which is back to school, right? Nutrition, how to kind of navigate the dining halls on campus. I know we're both getting a ton of questions right now in our DMs about how do I navigate the dining hall. I'm getting so many questions specifically about like protein and different things like that. So I'm really excited to kind of jump into this right now. We had different kind of college experiences. So you were in a sorority, an active individual. How was the dining hall for you?
So even though I'm wearing an NC State shirt today, I went to Colorado State, so go Rams. Well, during my freshman year, I lived in the dorms, so I was on a mandatory meal service, and I had 14 meals a week on my pass, which meant that I was responsible for at least some of my meals and some of my fueling on my own time. So I had to kind of come up with a combination of meals between like the sorority that I was in, meals at the dining hall, and then also meals that I made in my dorm room. I had the best ever freshman roommate. She was awesome. But she and I got really creative with foods that we made in our room because we were both on a lower amount of meals per week. A lot of times we did breakfast in our own room. We can talk about that a little bit later. But she also had some of the best like go-to easy microwavable like pasta recipes and things like that. So I learned a lot of like microwavable cooking during my freshman year in order to offset those meals that I didn't have in the dining hall.
I want to hear about like your microwavable meals. I mean, we did that too. So I was a student athlete in college. It was a little bit different because we did have a student athlete dining hall. They only open, at 7, and for most of us athletes, our first training session, our weights was happening at 6:30. Even at 7, you can't get to the dining hall. So I was so similar where I was doing mug breakfast, trying to eat breakfast. A lot of the times I ended up just eating bars though because I didn't have time and I didn't have the resources. But what were some of your like go-to mug recipes?
Yeah, so we did eggs a lot of times in a cup. We also did like microwavable oatmeal and we would add things to it. And then Pasta was so easy to cook in we had like a pasta cooker, like a microwave cooker. So it was basically just like a Tupperware thing that you filled up with water, put your pasta in there, and then threw it in the microwave. Those were probably the go-tos, I would say. And we always had like yogurts in our little mini fridge and things like that. So probably the reason that we did so well our freshman year is that our specific dorm had a sink in our room, and we also had a mini fridge. So we were super lucky that we had both of those things. I know not every dorm had that, and I am so fortunate that I did, because there's so much that you can do even with like limited kitchen or a smaller kitchen equipment, like cooking pasta in a microwave.
Can we also talk about how underrated eggs in a microwave are? Like eggs in a mug. We grew up eating our scrambled eggs like that. My parents would make them like that because, I mean, you can put them in the microwave for 30 seconds to a minute and it scrambles them. And I didn't realize, like, once I started working with athletes, not everybody does it like that. And some people are like, wait, you cook your eggs in the microwave? And I'm like, yeah, do you know?
Do you not?
Especially too if you put them in a mug, you can make almost like little egg patties that you can put on like an English muffin, or you can make a little sandwich out of it, which is another like little tip for the dorm.
And that's an easy way to get in some protein too, which we're always looking for ways to get in a good amount of protein, pack protein in the morning or whatever it is that you're looking to do for your specific plan. An easy way to do that is with an egg. I know there's a lot of things out nowadays too, like Kodiak Cake has those microwavable options too. So there's more things I feel like that are coming out.
And I think too, like, especially talking with the athletes, and even like I mentioned, I started teaching at the university, so being back in a college campus, but obviously being in a different role, a lot of them have come up to me and asked, like, how do I get in more protein? Like, the dining hall protein options aren't great. And I feel like the protein conversation is the one that I'm having the most lately. There's lots of easy options that individuals, either if you're an athlete or if you're an active individual or just somebody who's a college student, can benefit from.
Like, again, if you do have access to a refrigerator, you can always keep like deli meat on hand, Greek yogurts, cottage cheese, things like that are kind of quick and easy and portable and don't require a lot of prep.
I'm a big cheese stick girl, so like 2 cheese sticks, it's like 13 to 15 grams of protein depending on which one you grab, and that's perfect amount of protein for a snack. So I love cheese sticks, and even if you don't have a fridge, you could do beef jerky sticks. Like, those are super popular, another easy way to grab in some protein, and those don't go bad, so you can stock up on those when you go to the grocery store. Something that athletes and college students have now that I wish we had was like Amazon delivery or like grocery delivery, because I remember my best friend on the team, she wasn't my best friend because she had the car, but I was lucky that she was my best friend and she had the car. But we would all like kind of pile in the car and do like weekly grocery store trips because there was no other way to get there. But now that grocery store delivery is so widely available, and that's something that I always recommend to athletes.
What was your specific dining experience like being a student athlete?
Yeah, so I was similar, where I had to have a meal plan freshman year. We did have an athlete-specific dining hall, but the rules were a little bit different. We always joke now that we wish we were student athletes like a little bit later, because I graduated in 2014. Soccer's a fall sport, so my last season was fall of 2013. The summer of 2014, the deregulation of feeding happened, which allowed athletic departments to quote unquote spend as much money as they wanted on student athlete nutrition, student athlete fueling. Shout out to that regulation. It really helped the sports dietitian career kind of kickstart. After that ruling, the athlete nutrition availability was so different. When I was a student athlete, we had access to student athlete dinner only, but our other meals were at the regular dining hall. I think I had 19 meals a week my freshman year. So you could use those at the dining hall, or you also could use those at other restaurant locations around campus. And many athletes that I work with or college students have a similar setup to that. So they can swipe in at the dining hall. It's like the buffet. You can get whatever you want, or you can kind of like swap that out for, like, everybody calls them different things, but like dining dollars or different things like that at restaurants around campus.
What was your favorite meal that you had on campus?
All right, so I have not been shy on this podcast and just in general about sharing my journey. I've always loved food, but I didn't really understand, or I guess, the importance of nutrition, and I definitely had a disordered relationship. It was not a great relationship with food. So I would often skip meals because I was scared of eating carbohydrates or protein or fat. Like, it kind of just rotated. At NC State, we are famous, not like locally famous, like regionally famous for the ice cream that we make, because it's a big agricultural school. There's like cows on campus and things like that, but they make this Howling Cow ice cream. And there's 2 places that you can get it, like they're at the libraries, but one swipe, you could get a pint of ice cream. So sometimes we would be like, do we swipe into the dining hall? Or do we go get a pint of ice cream? And because, again, like I didn't have the nutrition knowledge that I have now and had a little bit of a disordered relationship, I sometimes would skip dinner and just go get ice cream, which wasn't necessarily the best. It was great for my mental and social health, but wasn't great for my performance on the field. But that's something that like always really sticks out to me from my college nutrition experience. What about you?
First, before I answer that, I have to ask, is that the ice cream that you and Robbie had at your wedding?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. As soon as you said that, I was like, I wonder if that's the same ice cream. That was so good. I remember that y'all had ice cream at your wedding, which was so fun. My favorite dining hall experience at Colorado State, at the time I was there, they had this restaurant called Spoons in one of the dining halls, which basically was just salad, soup, and a piece of bread. And they were only open like Monday through Thursday, or weird days, and it was like only lunchtime meal that they were there. And we would specifically plan to go on the days when they had specific soups that we wanted, and it was so good. So that's what I remember the most. The rest of it, it wasn't very memorable to me, which I don't know if that's like, because it was just pretty typical dorm food. So, but apparently they've really revamped their dorm system and dining hall experience since I've been there. So if you're in the process of looking for a school, go check out Colorado State's revamped dining halls. Let me know. One of the questions that we kind of keep seeing right now is that my dining hall has a lot of options. How do I keep up with my fueling? It feels very overwhelming. I think this is super relatable for a lot of people because you do walk into maybe a buffet type of experience, and if that's unfamiliar to you and you're still trying to keep up with your fueling, like what do you pick? What do you go to? Like what do you gravitate towards in order to keep yourself like on top of your game?
Yeah, I think first of all, it is totally normal to feel overwhelmed. You're not the only person. Like Jenna just mentioned, we are having this conversation all the time. It can be super overwhelming from maybe going from a setting where maybe you're being provided meals by a family member or a caretaker, and then you are almost let loose in this ginormous food hall with all of these people. Some athletes also share that they're nervous, they don't know what to pick, they feel like there's pressure. So it's totally okay if you feel overwhelmed. I think kind of solving that aspect is my first go-to. A lot of schools now have dining apps. One of the previous teams that I've worked with had such a great app on their phone where you could see the menu for, the week. You could kind of pick what sounds good, have a little bit of a plan. So when you go in, you are feeling a little bit more confident when you're choosing your meals.
Absolutely. I think it's so beneficial if a school does have some type of dining hall menu that you can check in advance, because it's just a great way to plan ahead. And it'll probably become more familiar with you the longer that you spend on campus. I know, at least in my experience, I knew exactly which dining hall had the sandwiches I wanted on Tuesdays or something like that as time went on. So even though it might feel extremely overwhelming right now, it's going to be okay. It'll become more familiar and will help you get through it.
Exactly. I also always recommend too practicing your fueling, the summer before your first college campus experience, and coming up with some like easy and sustainable habits that you can easily take into the dining hall. We talk a lot about the performance plate method in the Performance Fueling Club and with the clients that we work with. And that method is really easy to practice in the dining hall, right? When we look at the performance plates, there's carbs, there's protein, there's colors, there different portions based off of activity level, off of training. But being able to practice some of that and understand what foods fall into each category is really helpful. So when you go into that environment where there is so many options, you're like, hey, this is a color. Hey, this is a carb. Hey, this is a protein. I think athletes and non-athletes can benefit from that method.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. I also think that when I'm talking with someone who's maybe entering a dining hall for the first time and we're using some type of a performance plate method, my recommendation is always to go to whichever portion feels most comfortable and most familiar to you. So for some people that might be protein, but for other folks that might be color. So if like the salad bar is something that feels comfortable to go to first, go there, start there, and then say, okay, now I've got my color. I know that that's my portion of color for today. Now I can feel more comfortable going and saying, okay, now I'm going to go get this for my carbohydrate choice today. So start with whichever portion feels most comfortable and most familiar to you.
Yes, I love it. It doesn't have to be like super complicated. It can be very simple. And I think too, feeling things that are, or choosing things that are comfortable, but then also like being flexible. I always say like going with a plan A or going with a plan, B. I usually love recommending any of the specialty stations as like a plan A, right? So a lot of places will do a make your own pasta or like make your own salad or stir fry. And that can be a plan A because that provides variety. It's different every single time, because another big thing with the dining hall, which we can talk about, is like if you're eating the same thing every single day, it's going to get so boring. So trying to have a plan A that provides a variety, but then having that backup option as a plan B where you know that you can get all of the components in on your plate.
And typically that can even be as simple as finding a station that does wraps or sandwiches and pairing that with a side salad.
So you're a whiz at some of the dorm meals and things like that. Before we get into that, how do you make things at the dining hall that are repetitive? Like, what are some of your favorite tips and tricks to kind of make those things a little bit more exciting, especially if you're having, again, like grilled chicken and rice and the salad bar every single day?
Yeah, again, I think it kind of goes back to look ahead, check out what maybe other dining halls are offering. I know at least at my college campus, different dining halls offer different foods. So if you've been going to the same one over and over, maybe check out a new one. I also think that feeling like you can try something new, this is a great time to do it. A lot of times dining halls have unlimited options. So you can go and get something and try it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to finish that plate. You can just go find a different swap for that. Say, for example, you've never had tofu before, your dining hall offers tofu, and you want to try it out for a plant-based protein source. This is a great time to do it without not having a backup option to say, okay, tofu's not for me, I don't love it, but I know I can go get a grilled chicken breast, which I am familiar with afterwards. And then I also always love to just remind people that, like, just like Reilly kind of mentioned with ice cream, there are foods that we want to pick because they're nourishing for our body and they help with our performance, but there are also foods in a dining hall that I like to call a little bit more soul nourishing. So that might be enjoying some ice cream with dorm friends or maybe other fellow athletes, team members or something like that. So it's always fun to get those incorporated in your fueling too.
I love that. I think sometimes we're so focused on like performance and how the nutrition is going to affect us physically that we forget that eating is a social thing. It can be such a great social event and you can meet new people, right? Like you can have some ice cream, meet some new friends like at the dining hall. So I love that you just mentioned that one. I think that's something that people easily forget.
Yeah. Or, if you're someone kind of like myself, I tend to lean more towards the introverted side of things. My hall started to try to do like weekly like dorm dinners, and that was a great way to kind of socialize with food too. And lo and behold, for most of the people that was like, oh, we want to go have the dorm that has pizza, and pizza can still be a great part of your fueling plan. So don't be afraid of those social situations, even if it doesn't seem on the surface like it's exactly the right fit at that moment.
I love that. Switching directions a little bit, I have been getting a ton of questions about dining hall proteins. So I would love for you to share a couple of your favorite dining hall proteins and recommendations for just ways for athletes and non-athletes to get protein at the dining hall.
I always gravitate towards sandwiches because I think about my first meal in the dining hall being my lunchtime meal, because more often than not, I didn't have my breakfast in the dining hall. So I did a lot of like deli meats for that, but there was also a couple options where you could get like hot meat added to your sandwich, whether that be like grilled chicken that they had that day or maybe even like some type of a pulled pork, pulled brisket type of situation. A lot of dining halls now are catering more towards maybe a vegan or vegetarian eating style. So now often you see salad bars that might have cottage cheese. Cottage cheese, like we've talked about before, is a great source of protein and one that I really love to incorporate in my fueling just because I think it tastes delicious. But you can also do things like add protein to the top of a salad, get a sandwich that has some type of a grilled meat on there. So I feel like there are a lot of options with protein. What do you gravitate towards or recommend?
I usually recommend providing as much variety as possible, right? So trying to go for the specialty dishes when those are available, but then always having again, that backup option. I think sauce can be a great addition to, an individual's nutrition or fueling plan. I always tell people hey, if they don't have hot sauce, bring a little hot sauce with you. It can really help elevate a protein dish and just provide a little bit of variety. So I always say that. Greek yogurt is a great option at the dining hall. Eggs. And when it comes to protein prioritization, I always recommend, we can definitely get protein in at breakfast. It's pretty hard to mess up eggs or yogurt, so you always can lean on that option for breakfast. And then lunch, like you mentioned, a sandwich is a great option. Sandwiches are totally underrated. I've joked before that we should name the podcast Eat More Sandwiches because I think they're an underrated fueling tip. And then, being flexible with dinner, looking for sauces, looking for different ways to add in other sources of protein.
I love the hot sauce tip. I'm probably going to butcher the names of the hot sauces, so I'm not going to try to say them. But I had a friend that literally carried around a bottle of hot sauce because that's what she liked with most of her protein sources. And it was perfect. So you can definitely go buy some hot sauce, and there's nothing that says you can't add a little bit of flavor that you've brought with you.
And that also works too when we talk about dorm food, right? You can put hot sauce on eggs, you can put hot sauce on, the Tyson grilled chicken strips that you throw in the microwave. It can just elevate any type of fueling. So I love that.
One of the other questions that I've been getting is how to eat at the dining hall and still avoid the freshman 15.
Who came up with the freshman 15? I'm over that. I think I'm having this conversation all the time as well. So many individuals are so scared of the freshman 15. I remember when I first started at NC State, there was this joke that your practice gear would start off as a size small. Your shorts would be a size small. And by the end of senior year, you would have large shorts. And it was a thing. And I was so terrified to get to be the person that got large shorts. I think this really kind of correlates on why the dining hall is so overwhelming for individuals, because we put so much pressure on, you're at the dining hall, you've never ate outside your home really by yourself, and now you have to pick all the best and healthy options so you don't gain the freshman 15.
It is probably one of the reasons why the dining hall feels overwhelming, because we're how do I continue to fuel my body without maybe changing the appearance of my body? As a side note, unrelated to dining halls or anything like that, just as a reminder, your body is meant to change. I'm not going to go into embracing change in your body right now because we're specifically talking about dining hall things, so we could definitely go into a whole topic of that on another podcast, but just as a reminder, your body is meant to change. If you're curious about making sure that you're picking choices to fuel your body, some of the things I like to remind people is that skipping meals does more harm than it does good. So thinking that you're going to avoid any type of potential weight modifications because you aren't consuming a meal probably works against you. Like we've talked about before, that can cause backlogging of intake, that might cause imbalances in blood sugar, it might cause problems even concentrating in the classroom. And at the end of the day, even if you are a student athlete, you're also there to learn. So we want to make sure that you're fed on the field or in the court, whatever it is that you play for your sport, but also in the classroom too.
I also wanted to add something again. I know we're talking about the dining hall, but I do think that this conversation is part of it. You are still growing at 18 or 19. You might be still going through puberty, right? There's still growth happening. So even if you went to college or you didn't go to college, you might still have weight modification. And because you are, doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. And it's totally normal. It's totally okay. Like Jenna said, we're supposed to grow. When I came out as a baby, I was like 8 pounds, 9 pounds. And nobody's like, why don't you look like you were when you were a baby? But everybody's like, well, you have to look like what you looked like in high school. And so it's just something to like reiterate and to rethink about is like things are going to change and that's totally okay.
Even though Reilly and I are sitting here and encouraging you to feel okay about changes that you might be seeing with your body, even if it is weight related, please know that it's always okay to reach out and ask for help. I also think it's a good time to mention too that if you're someone who has any type of a food allergy, the dining hall staff is there to help you with your allergies or anything like that, to let you know what is in the foods and what might be safe for you to consume. So asking for help is okay too. Any final thoughts today?
My biggest 2 recommendations are to plan ahead if you can, right? Check out the app, do a little bit of research, but then also practice your fueling ahead of time, right? Understand, what's a carb, what's a protein, what's a color, how can I use the performance plate method. In the dining hall, I think being prepared will help you feel more confident in the dining hall. And then also being flexible with your nutrition plan. It doesn't have to be perfect every single time, and it's going to be okay.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Eat More Carbs podcast. On today's episode, we talked about challenges and changes that we might be experiencing with going back to school and eating in a dining hall. Talked a little bit about our personal experiences in college. Reilly and I had very different college experiences, but we both found that fueling was sometimes challenging. Walking into the dining hall with a good plan as far as what you are going to have to eat that day is not a bad place to start. If you do have questions specifically for Reilly and I, please reach out to us on social media. We're at the Eat More Carbs podcast on Instagram, or you can leave it in the comments below on this podcast. Make sure you rate and review and subscribe to the podcast, and we will release new episodes every Tuesday. Just remember to always eat more carbs.